Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, it's all right. It's 6:02, so we should call the meeting to order. Can you hear me online? All right, Kristen, can you hear us?
Yes,
Kristen?
loud and clear.
Oh, thank you. Good. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I would like to call the meeting to order. I would like to, first, we're going to just, this is the Bristol Conservation Commission. We're going to start the meeting by moving the wildlife presentation to the beginning of our agenda. So you don't have to listen to us approve minutes and things from last month. A couple of housekeeping items. If you can please give us your name. Helen needs them for the minutes. So if you're on Zoom, we can read your name. We'll be copying those over. And then if you're in person, if you could please have there's a sign up sheet somewhere. If you make sure you sign that up, just to make sure we know who is available, who's in the meeting. We also have vacancies for 2 members. So if you're a Bristol resident and are excited by these topics or interested in what we do have spots for 2 vacancies right now. So if you're interested, give us your email and we'll meet and we can talk more about it, or email, or you can just join, which would be amazing. I want to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded. Several people have already said they're going to watch it. Usually people don't always watch our meetings, so they've specifically said they're going to watch it. So, all right. So this project today with we have our Middlebury students attending here. You want to say hi so the camera will look at you?
Hey.
Hello.
Okay, well, we're looking at Max at least. Okay. So I want to let you know this project is the work of 5 Middlebury College seniors that are a capstone course. It's Environmental Studies 401, which is the Community Engaged Environmental Studies Practicum. And this is with Professor Alexis Mikhailov, who is also here. Basically, the BCC realized in 2020 that the town plan, we realized the town plan wildlife corridor maps hadn't been updated in nearly 20 years. And we didn't have the expertise to tackle this issue. There's a lot of mapping involved, bringing in community stakeholders, tracking. We just didn't know how to do all those pieces. So we've been working with a few Middlebury College students over the last year or so, as well as a tracking connection to get preliminary data, to get sort of ready for these students to join this class for the spring semester. So we'll see what they present tonight. This has been student driven. We gave them ideas of what we needed, pretty much what I just said. A slightly longer version, but that's about it. And then they just sort of ran with it. So this is their project. I don't know what they're going to present on, which is very exciting. They wrote the survey, they did all those things you may have seen. That was all their work. And so we'll see what happens with that. And in my role as a professor, I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. My name is Carolyn Dash. I'm also a professor in the biology department at Middlebury College. And in that role, I can answer questions and I can act to help as a professional liaison with these students. But Alex Smith, who's right here, has acted as their true community mentor this semester. He's not only met with them and answered questions, but he's also gone into the field with them. They've gotten dirty. They've been hiking and checking camera traps and getting the students excited. And that's been really inspiring the students in the way that like a true wilderness guide can be. That I do not have those skills. And it's been amazing. So thank you so much for your work on this project. So I want the students to take it away. After we talk about this, then we'll have time for a Q&A afterwards. So we'll watch the presentation and then we'll do questions. All right, so you can share your screen, take it away.
You bet. Fantastic. Okay, great. We're on. I'll just minimize that quickly. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for coming. It's so great to see so many people here. We have been working on a project for the past semester titled Bristol Wildways, and this presentation is called How Did the Bobcat Cross the Road? To just jump into an anecdote, did the Bobcat cross the road on its own? Did it use wildlife-minded infrastructure to help cross the roadway? Or did it meet a more tragic fate in the most morbid of human-wildlife interactions? We've been studying the story of bobcats like these and many other wildlife species throughout the Bristol area over the past several months. I'll be preaching to the choir and saying that Bristol is a lovely town, with a really charming village here surrounded by a patchwork of homes and really valuable wildlife habitat. And as more people start to become aware of the beauty that Bristol has, that patchwork is becoming a lot more dense. More homes are being developed, roads are being built, and that once intact habitat is becoming more fragmented. So in that context, we have been doing our best to acquire as much data as possible to provide objective recommendations to the town of Bristol to try to guide wildlife-minded development into the future. As Carolyn touched on a bit, our class is titled Environmental Studies 401. It's the senior seminar, community engaged practicum class, and our section is titled From Conflict to Coexistence, a Data-Driven Approach to Human-Wildlife Interactions in Vermont. We are one of 4 projects that are happening in this class, led by Professor Alexis Mikhailo. Others are talking about beaver management, small mammal management in the state of Vermont, as well as a project with the Ripton Conservation Commission on community science and camera trapping. As has also been introduced, we've been working in close partnership with the Bristol Conservation Commission. We're super appreciative of this opportunity and thankful for the expertise that Carolyn and Alex have provided throughout this semester. It really wouldn't have been possible without them. It's been great. And before we get too far, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Eli Dabari. I'm a conservation biology major at the college. I'm originally from Missoula, Montana.
I'm Brian. I'm an environmental economics major. I'm from Singapore, so the city.
I'm AJ. I am a conservation biology major, and I am from Seattle.
I'm Bailey. I'm a environmental studies geography major, and I'm from Denver originally. Yeah.
I'm Max. I'm also a con bio major, and I'm from Boxford, Massachusetts.
So today we wanted to just kind of give a quick table of contents for what we're going to talk about and kind of how we've broken down a lot of our work as well, starting with kind of the framework of how we approached this project, what we were given, and some of the foundational research that made a part of that. Then we'll go into some of the spatial analysis and mapping we did, along with kind of the bulk of what our project was, which was conducting field work of camera trapping, led by Knowledge and working with Alex in particular. And then community survey we also conducted that maybe many of you saw and what inspired you to be here. And then kind of information pamphlet and educational materials that we're also producing for homeowners, followed by, of course, some of our preliminary conclusions.
Yeah, so here's like a brief framework of our project. So our project is based on a lot of like previous research done on this topic of wildlife corridors. So we have at the regional level, at the town level, and as well as previous Middlebury College students who have worked on this. Then afterwards, from all this like research, it built up onto our work, which is to investigate and update the wildlife corridors in Bristol. So as part of our work, we employ like methodologies from the groundwork of camera trapping with Alex, and as well as doing like GIS analysis, and as well as survey that we conducted online and community outreach. And then from this work we have done, we produced 4 main deliverables, which is our camera trap results, our wildlife corridors map, our survey results, and as well as educational resources. And all this, we plan to give all this to the BCC to inform and update the information we have about Bristol Natural Capital, and hopefully this will help the BCC to update its decisions. Next, I will elaborate a little bit more about like the foundational research that our project is based on, as well as like what has been done so far, because this is not like something new that we first done, but like a lot of work have been done, and we do not want to throw them out and want to like base our project on this past research. So previously on the state level, like or regional level, like this is a study like being done at the New England regional level, and it shows like researchers have found like the species resistance in this region from comparing from the year 2010 to the year 2060. And as you can see, like the first column on the left, like some species will do well, but other species will not. So like the coyote looks great, but like the moose and like the wild turkey, it's like um their resistance is a bit lower. And so like yeah, there's a lot of previous research being done on this.
Can we ask questions or would you rather we didn't?
I don't know.
We'll have time at the end.
Yeah, then we also like to show a little bit of what previous students have done. So this is by a student, Middlebury College student and he did like camera trapping at Memorial and Sycamore Park. So it's like the two public parks in Bristol, and this is like the occurrence counts of like various species that he caught in his camera trap. So there were species like deer, mouse, flying squirrel, and stuff like that.
And so with that, the first major component of the research we took on was looking at spatial analysis, mapping of Bristol and the wildlife corridors within it. But this also wasn't without some backing research. We have these two maps here, as well as several others from other town plans and other student research. And they do a really good job of identifying big forest habitat blocks within Bristol, as well as potential pathways of movements throughout those forest blocks. So we wanted to take this and then be more specific about which areas are really key for protecting for those movement pathways. Yeah. And so we produced this map here, as well as several others. So we were looking at three main layers within Bristol. We were looking at protected forest land. So this is public land, either owned by the town, the state, or the government. These areas are designated primarily for wildlife protection and are kind of known biodiversity hotspots that do a great job of maintaining wildlife habitat. We also were looking at non-conserved forest land. So these are big tracts of forest that exist within Bristol, but that do not have any kind of protection status on it right now, whether that be through like easements, like selling to federal land, things like that. And then we also have these rivers, wetlands, ponds, and other riparian zones. Forests and waterways are really essential for wildlife movement. Those are the two main things in New England that wildlife rely on for corridors. And so, as you can see here, we have these couple of sort of islands of protected forest surrounded and woven within these currently unprotected forest blocks. There's this big section in the middle of Bristol here too, that's national forest land. Yeah, but Eli, can you? And so with that, we were looking at these four areas circled in black in particular. You can see two areas up north in Bristol on the border by Moncton, one in the center and one down towards Lincoln. And we're really interested in these areas because these are the forest blocks in between the protected area. And so for maintaining movement kind of along the mountains ridges within Bristol and then kind of in and out of the town, these areas are really essential, especially the one up by Bristol Pond. So we wanted to dive more into those areas, which you'll see later on is where we kind of focused for camera trapping. And then we also have developed some other mapping tools for the BCC. One of these is this interactive mapping tool. And we were able to put in all these layers that focus on different things. So some of it is our own camera trapping inventory. You can see there's also the streams, the protected areas. We also have layers that look at things like land cover within Bristol, which really gets into kind of what development is where. And this can be used by the BCC or by anyone really to kind of dive into specific areas, look at how things overlap. The state of Vermont is actually really amazing for geographic data. There are tons of public layers. And so all of this comes from the Vermont Geodata portal, which gives us information for things like tree cover, for stream locations, land cover, all of that sort of thing.
So it takes us into our camera trapping. This is the big bulk of the results that we are bringing in. Dr. Dash did mention that there is tracking data previously from other students that have looked at it the past couple of semesters, but I'm sure you all know that our snow cover this year was a little off. And so we were excited to look at that, but it just ended up being more worthwhile to focus our efforts on camera trapping, at least for this season. So we had 5 different locations for our camera traps that are all within the 4 areas that Max just mentioned. So we have 3 up at the top of in the north area of Bristol, 1 off of a development on Piney Woods Road, and then 1 in Bristol Pond, and then 1 in the Hogback Saddle, and then further down in the river where 116 cuts through in Bristol Cliffs. This is where 116 cuts through some pretty big sections of forest. And then once again, down at the bottom in the south of Bristol at Notch Road, which is where there's some more development happening right now in between different forest areas. And so in total, we had 17 different cameras set up for a total of 654 track nights. And this is from February all until April. And we collected more than 20,000 photos. And so to help go through these photos, we used Wildlife Insights, which is an online platform that helps kind of organize this data before we start going through and manually checking what species we found. And it's also a way that we're able to share this data with the BCC later. And we had a lot of fun with the with the field work for sure. You guys live here, so you know how amazing it is to be outside in Bristol. But rain or snow or sunshine, we went out a couple weeks after we first placed the camera traps. We went back to make sure they were picking up the species that we wanted to. They were at a good level and good angle, and making sure that they were correctly recording onto our SD cards. And we went back periodically every couple of weeks to check on them. And sometimes they were across rivers and up mountains, but we definitely enjoyed it. Yeah.
I got the unique privilege of carrying my computer across the stream between Bristol Pond, which was really fun.
The kid in my backpack is screaming. You got a bunch of snow down his shirt.
Yeah, so we'll now like give a brief like introduction to each site and like brief like data about each site. So the first one is Bristol Pond. I'm super psyched about Bristol Pond because like when I first went there, like when Alex first like brought us there, like I saw it was really a narrow stretch of forest. Like on the left was like, okay, on one side was like a cliff down to the pond, and on the other side it was like open farmland. And so I was really very excited to see like it really like when I was there, it really looked like a like wildlife corridor. And I was really excited to see what like we will catch like in that area and what animals are crossing that area. And briefly, like in this location, like on the west, on the left-hand side is like the watershed center. On the right is like the Hogback Mountain. So it's like really like a spot where it connects like two important like wildlife regions, like forest blocks. And so here is like a chart of what we found. Yes, so like we like there's a lot of like northern raccoon, like almost disproportionately like
It's
many.
probably the same one.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably maybe close to home, I don't know, but like it's really like almost like every day there's like a bunch of raccoons crossing that area. But we also like caught some like coyotes, bobcats, and porcupine and white-tailed deer in this location. But outside of the top 5, we also like saw some bears and otters. So I think what really struck me with this site is like even like how small it is. Like I thought it would like be useless or something, but no, like it's actually like being used, and I was personally like really surprised and like wow, yeah.
So this, we don't have the exact dots on it just to provide some anonymity, but our camera traps were off Piney Woods Road in this site, which is kind of a more mixed use residential kind of rural development area in Moncton, actually, I know, but provides a good case study for like this type of land use and development. And so we were curious how kind of these areas that have dispersed housing with a lot of open fields, what the wildlife corridors and connectivity looks like in these type of areas. So yeah, this is our similar graph. We had a lot less wildlife activity here, but still some, mostly white-tailed deer and eastern cottontail and eastern gray squirrel were the top 3. So mostly kind of saw deer in the fields coming through there, and definitely a lot less wildlife activity and diversity compared to a site with a lot of riparian habitat like Bristol Pond.
As was mentioned, we put some cameras up in the Bristol Cliffs Wilderness, right on the south side of the river from like Hogback Mountain Brewery. Yeah, so the New Haven River flows right through there, as does Vermont Route 116, and kind of a bottleneck for wildlife that might be passing through. To the south of this image is the Bristol Cliffs Wilderness, a huge, really uninterrupted piece of wildlife habitat. And to the north is the Hogback Mountain Range. So this super small area is a key conduit between those two areas that we know a lot of wildlife use. So what we were mainly looking for here was activity of wildlife crossing the river and the road to see what might be moving through the area. And once again, a lot of raccoons. It's funny because I feel like we've seen foxes out and about, we've seen deer out and about, we've never seen raccoons out and about in our trip, but there are reasons behind that, of course. It's just funny to see so many photos. But yeah, there were a lot of raccoons, a lot of gray foxes, and it was clear that things were moving along the river. We had one that was pointing right at the water, and got some great photos of mink, of gray foxes, of bobcats moving past. This is definitely a high priority area because of that key connection that I mentioned. But it's really promising that this wildlife does have so much space to move to the south as well as to the north. So yeah, this was definitely a site that we were really interested in. There's also activity of past human use in this area. We've heard stories of there being a baseball field on that side of the river, in what is now the wilderness area. It's a really nice flat bench, and there are trails that humans clearly use. There's that small subdivision on the north side of the river there, and there's a rope swing across from a nice beach. So people are definitely in the area, but so are the wildlife. So this was definitely interesting to see.
And then our last major camera trapping site was Upper Notch Road here. These cameras were also technically not in Bristol, they were in Lincoln, but they were right in this stretch of a mix of protected forest land, unprotected. Obviously a lot of greenery up here, but there is also some development too, so we're really curious to see what we would find moving through there along the ridge. And yeah, less raccoons, but white-tailed deer. Turkeys, squirrels, coyotes, and gray foxes here. So yeah, similar to other sites, but I guess the raccoons didn't like it quite as much.
So overall, as you would expect, a lot of raccoons, a lot of deer, a lot of squirrels, a lot of rabbits. Yeah, surprise, surprise. The gray foxes were a cool one though. And as you might expect, you all are the people that live here, you know what lives around you. But yeah, this camera trap data definitely provided some insight into what is around. There are other ways to do this. If we were to continue with this study, we might be more intentional about setting up cameras in a grid pattern across different areas. So we could quantify this data a bit more to understand like the occurrence of specific species. All of our sites were chosen based on past information describing what makes a key wildlife corridor, as well as the great knowledge provided by Alex, being someone who spends a lot of time in the woods, knowing what areas could be particularly interesting to look into. So this provided some insight, though there's a lot more information out there. We would be remiss to not share some of the great photos we got. As Brian mentioned, a river otter passed by our camera at Bristol Pond several times, which is definitely a cool find. Here's a photo of the bear. They definitely came out. We got photos of them in April, as you'd expect. They were still in their dens earlier on. Several bobcats, definitely cool to see. Coyotes, which often looks a bit mischievous in their camera trap photos. One of our porcupines. These are a few representatives of the raccoon family that lived at Bristol Pond. Some of the many deer off of Piney Woods Road. Gray fox. And a mink moving along the river. This is a stretch of bank that you can see. I mean, you drive past it every day if you're moving along 116. was definitely cool to see the wildlife that happens that area, or that spends time in that area as well. And then one of the species we were most excited about getting photos of was a fisher off of Upper Notch Road.
Yeah, so beyond the camera trapping, we also conducted a community survey wanting to hear input from you all, from people in the town. Might be why some of you all are here tonight. Just asking people about their feelings and opinions around conservation in the town. And because we're not from here, wanting to get a larger sense and scope of the situation and sentiments in the town. So this was combined of a couple questions asking people what animals they'd seen around their property, if they're a landowner in the town, or and like where roughly they live in the town. And then also kind of this like value matrix around how you feel around different statements around wildlife conservation, and opportunities too for like longer open-ended short answer questions to hear some more feedback. So we were able to look through some results. It was really great. We had over 158 responses in total, so for a short period of time, which was really impressive. Thank you all for filling this out. And of that, we had about 98 that we ended up using just because of people that finished the survey and other things like that. And so from that, we had a nice breakdown of people from the village and people from like rural agricultural and rural forested areas, which was really nice to have kind of both perspectives included. This was the question of what wildlife people have seen at or around your home in Bristol in the last year, which I realize is also kind of small text up here, but a lot of gray squirrels, a lot of rabbits, turkeys, striped skunks, but then also like 18 fishers, which is really exciting. 7 moose, 46 black bear, some red foxes, 33 opossums, so 3 river otters. Anyway, so people are, noticing wildlife in town, and they're not only kind of seeing the deers that come by and the turkeys, but a lot of other wildlife, and are keenly aware of what wildlife live around them in Bristol, which is great to see people's engagement in the community. These are a few results too to some of those value matrix questions. The first one is Bristol should prioritize educating the community about wildlife conservation. Most people either put strongly agree or somewhat agree. Wildlife conservation is a priority for me. Most people put strongly agree or somewhat agree. And then homes should continue to be built in the Bristol area, strongly agree, somewhat agree, and more people were kind of neutral, which is that blue, and that one as well. So these are just 3 examples, but kind of varied responses of both kind of this tension between conserving and continuing to build homes and develop, and what that looks like. As I mentioned, we had 158 responses during the survey, which is really great. And some of the highlights too from the longer short answer questions were also kind of range the gamut of people's perspectives, which was really great context for us as well, of protecting the diversity of species we have, making sure there's enough space for them to thrive, to balancing growth and recreation with protecting natural resources, considering the traditions in Vermont, consider the traditions important to Vermont, letting everyone have a voice at the table, and to mind your own backyard, not mine. So with these survey results, we definitely we're lucky that although we know we distributed these through kind of our networks, which are inherently somewhat biased through kind of Front Porch Forum and the Bristol Trail Network's email list, but we're still fortunate enough to get a pretty broad gamut of opinions and still an understanding of different conclusions for the town that hopefully the Bristol Conservation Commission can use to kind of guide some of their next steps.
So it's clear that you guys and all of Bristol residents really care about the natural spaces around you guys. And so we wanted to make sure there's information for homeowners about how to manage their property. So we ended up creating a Bristol homeowner habitat management pamphlet. There's paper versions being passed around, but there's also a QR code or a link if you want to see the online version as well. And yeah, it's clear that you guys really love this land around you. And there's also people who are moving into this area who might not be as familiar with it. So we really targeted this pamphlet to be for new homeowners in the area that might not have as much experience in Bristol or in Vermont, both to show them about the ecology we have here and the animals that live around them, but also the resources that are in Addison County and specifically in Bristol too. Yeah, and so it's clear that people think conservation is important, and we want to make sure that if people are interested in protecting movement of wild animals through habitat, that they know possible resources that they can use to help develop their own properties, land management goals. Yeah, and another part of this too is that over 70% of Bristol is privately owned, so private landowners do have a considerable impact in how Bristol is able to continue maintaining its wildlife populations through its habitat.
And so from all this work, from all these products, we were able to kind of come to a couple of conclusions. First of all, as hopefully you can tell from the presentation, we incorporated a lot of different sources, including like local ecological knowledge, community input, our own fieldwork, previous student stuff into this project. And we believe that through this incorporation of a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different knowledge, it helps to create the most robust framework for future development and conservation decisions. Centralized development within the Bristol Village, so this could include like things like apartments or tighter housing units, is the most effective way for allowing continued growth of the town and the town's businesses, while also preserving these wildlife corridors. And this one will be no mystery to you guys, but the town of Bristol really cares about this. 158 survey responses in, was it 3 weeks, a month, is amazing. And a lot of people took the time to go out of their way to write extra comments, things like that. So people are very clearly invested in this issue and this conversation, which we were really thrilled with. And then with that, we have some kind of continued research and partnership framework. We've talked with Alex about this, but unfortunately, several of the members of this group are graduating right now, and the rest of us will next year. And this semester is ending, but there is potential for a partnership with Middlebury College and their Center for Careers and Internships to have a funded internship position to kind of keep this work ongoing. We would really love to see that. And then we're also really focused on making sure that all of the work from this project is easily accessed in the future after we are no longer in Middlebury, by passing it on to the BCC, and yeah, again, potentially future interns or things like that. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to shout out the people who helped us with this project along the way. So a huge thank you to the Bristol Conservation Commission, especially Alex and Dr. Carolyn Dash. We'd also like to shout out some of the students who helped us. David and Lauren are both alumni, but their work kind of laid the groundwork for this. And Claire Ellerbrook helped us a lot with managing all of those 20,000 photos we had to deal with. And then we'd also like to thank Dr. Alexis Mikhailo and Claire Tebbs, as well as Dr. Jeff Howarth, for advising this project as Middlebury faculty. We'd like to thank all of the survey respondents for their input, all of you for showing up tonight, and just the town of Bristol as a whole. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to open the floor for questions. If you're on Zoom, if you could raise your hand or put a question in the chat, that would be great. Or I can turn every so often to Zoom and see if you want to check in. But for now, we'll see you have questions.
Yeah.
Question, we're originally from Illinois, and they have now from Canada, gray wolves have come down to Illinois. Have you seen gray wolves in Vermont?
We have not. Gray wolves were extirpated, which just means locally extinct from the area. There has not been evidence found by Fish and Wildlife. There are anecdotal stories of people seeing them here and there. There are also really large coyotes here and there too. So, but we have not found any evidence in Bristol.
On the raccoons, guys, it's two and one back and forth.
No, absolutely.
They're messing with our cameras.
Familiar faces.
No.
Yeah.
So one of the first slides was talking about the resistance, I think, and I
Yeah.
didn't know what that meant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like a research paper, like where they like did like a tried to do a projection, and then I think they define resistance as like if in each like cell that they use in the mapping analysis, like if they predict that in that cell there's a probability of more than 70% of finding species there in 2010 and in 2060 in their computer model, then it's classified as like in that cell, the species is resistant. I don't know. That's a,
Yeah.
I think general resistance and to developments and like ability to coexist in a human altered landscape.
Do we know, is climate change factored into that criteria at all? Is
They
that-
had some environmental factors, I believe, in kind of how they were mapping it. I don't think it was like a climate change specific one, but things like rainfall or like canopy cover were involved.
I have a multi-layered question.
Yeah.
So, were there any species that you suspected might be out there that you didn't see, or ones that were not necessarily identified? In terms of wildlife, number two, is that roughly all mammals mostly that you're considering? And then thirdly, maybe it's sort of related to the first question, are there some that you suspect that you just didn't capture, might have had a chance to see more in the summer, but it seems like you caught the bear coming out of hibernation, so.
Yeah, one that we were hoping for and got at the very end was that fisher. Another one we did not get was American martin. They're more elusive in the woods. I think we didn't get any beavers at Bristol Pond, though that's likely just due to where our cameras were placed. We tried to fill the gaps in our camera placement with the survey question about asking you all what species you see. But there was pretty good representation. We tried to focus in on indicators, like indicator species that we know to be representative of like forest health and a healthy ecosystem. And some of those that we primarily focused on were gray foxes and bobcats. But all of them can be applied to certain criteria. You all please jump in.
Well, another thing too, I think that the reflection today are the other groups in our class presented, and there's a small mammal group, and so we didn't have any like cameras focused on the small like shrews and all those things that are really left out of a lot of these research conversations, and that was kind of their project, was trying to bring them into the conversation. So I think there's definitely room for continued research in these things, as you had mentioned, of like a more grid-like framework, but we kind of treated these as specific case studies in different land use types around the town.
And yeah, to answer your question, we were focused on mammals for this study. Obviously, issues like amphibian crossing, things like that, is a big deal as well. But yeah, for camera trapping for this, we were focused on mammals.
I kind of mentioned it because just in gardening, I've seen that gardener snakes are out now, and I've heard that on the Bristol Cliffs Wilderness area, there was maybe a timber rattler snake.
Whoa, okay.
Obviously, they probably waited for really warmer weather, but there are rattler snakes down in Orwell and Benson, I've been told. But anyway, that's another rattle type snakes down in Orwell and Benson that face west. But anyway, that helps to understand if there's others that, could be out there. No catamounts though.
Well, we got close. We got the catamountiest looking non-catamount that has ever been seen.
A big bobcat.
Yeah, that's what it does.
I can attest to catamounts. I jumped one in my backyard 3 years ago.
So this,
I don't know who was more scared, him or me.
we'll have to send you this picture. This actually wasn't from our cameras, but I ran into somebody at work who swore to have seen a catamount, not too far from you up on Notch Road. And I thought, everybody says they see a catamount. I get like pictures of people's house cats and the tanker catamounts all the time.
Yeah.
And then we got this picture that is, it's pretty doggone catamounty, but the state expert on this says it's a bobcat. There's a funky shadow in it that looks like a tail that isn't apparently, but boy, it's the most convincing.
If you notice in the Fish and Game books, they have no open season on wolves, catamounts. That tells you that they are there. I know there's a wolf running around, for sure. I've seen his tracks, and I heard him, and I went to throw, I hear him so close. Yeah. But, is that on wild turkey, is that 130?
1.3.
Yeah, I was gonna
Well, that's
ask about
surprising
that.
because
Yeah.
there's an awful lot. I have every year just before the season opens, I have 30 or 40 in my backyard all the time.
Yeah.
Does anybody
But
have
this-
any insight on this? Because it looks like it's all of New England, and my experience, they're all over New England.
And it seems I go up in that clear cut up by the top of the mountain up there. That's where I seem to have.
That's my turkey spot.
I say all over.
But one thing, so on that subject, there is, you know, in terms of not just like what's here, but their resilience, wild turkeys are a very fragile species, and we're seeing that in the southeast in big numbers right now, that they're very susceptible to beast predators, of the populations of which are growing in a big way. You know, as we've seen about 700 pictures of raccoons, they're susceptible to really strong rains in the spring. There's a lot of things that make turkeys, though they are doing really well since reintroduction, they're a tender species compared to a lot of other things, which is nerve-wracking as somebody who's heavily invested in the wild turkey. A lot of states that had a lot of them have lost population in a big way in the southeast.
But yes, you make a good point that they are quite common around here. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about resistance?
Yeah.
It seems like it's really persistence, the way you described what that number really means, that in the sites in whatever the first year was, what percent of them still had those species? How persistent were they? So that might just tell you that wild turkeys are in different places than they were then, right? So I'm not really sure how to interpret this.
Yeah, well, it's also partially like species are able to persist if they're resistant to various actions that are happening throughout time. So definitely is like a balance of those, and species will tend to move to places that they like better. But that also would mean that you still don't have species here come 2060 if these predictions are true. So there's just so many variables that are very hard to tease apart, especially when you're starting looking at an ecosystem level. And that's why having this background data is very useful. I'm not sure if you guys want to add.
Yeah, don't quote me on this directly. I'd have to go back into the paper, but I believe, yeah. Say to the difference. I'd have to go back into the paper and look back at exactly how they did it, but I believe there was a factor where they compared like where they were found in 2010 and 2016 versus like what had actually developed in those areas. So they were kind of assessing overall resistance to like a general change factor. But yeah, persistence also would be a great way of describing it.
I'll just add that this is an open access paper we can share.
Yeah.
And this was conducted by UVM folks, so Jim Murdoch's like wildlife biology.
There's a saying that I've heard many times that goes, do not fall in love with a ground nesting bird. And that's somewhat indicative of this. They're susceptible. They're to the predators taking a vested interest in specializing in them. And a lot of other factors. They're just not as resilient as a lot of other large mammals, for instance.
In your Bristol pond camera, was it not accessing any of the water? Because I was kind of surprised you didn't see any waterfowl.
Yeah, so yeah, the Bristol pond, like the cameras we put was like up on the cliff, like it wasn't, yeah.
But that's where you saw all the raccoons.
Where it's all the raccoons,
So
and
I
the
just
river otter
assumed
made it
it's
up
because
there.
there was water there.
True, if you go to some of the photos of us, towards the beginning of, beginning, yeah.
Really?
Never mind. Okay, so like where I'm standing,
Yay!
or where, go to the one of me, sorry. Okay, so you can see my back is to where the cameras were. Up to the right, just out of the frame, it goes up a hill and flattens out, and where our cameras were placed, those two actually exactly right there, was about 10 or 20 yards from the edge of a ag field. So it was separated a bit from the water, far enough away to not catch waterfowl.
So it only went to April, so that might have been.
Yeah. We did get some waterfowl on the river, some mergansers and some mallards, not a huge diversity of things, but definitely they started showing up in the camera that we had put into the water.
Yeah, I noticed you had river otters you saw. Do you think there's enough river otters around here for a sustaining population? And if not, what can we do to help the species, to grow it?
It's a great question. I would say that yes, there is a self-sustaining population there at Bristol Pond. I'm really curious to know where other people have been seeing them, if it is in the New Haven River close by or in other tributaries. I think water quality is definitely a big thing that is important for river otters. I'm no expert on what it takes to help maintain their populations, but I think a lot of the methods that you would take to help protect any other species are super translatable to them. They really take advantage of riparian habitat, intact banks. So definitely careful developments in those riparian zones near rivers, near places like Bristol Pond. Yeah, that's very general advice, but
Yeah, so the waterworks,
yeah,
I have definitely seen track
great.
on the northeast side of the waterworks in the wintertime, the slides, and also on the New Haven River in multiple different locations.
It's my understanding there in Otter Creek also.
Yeah, you would think based on that. Yeah, perfect.
Another brief observation is, I've got barred owl
Nice.
on my
Super
property,
cool.
so I suppose where your cameras are aimed might have some variation of, and this is probably germane to Alex. In terms of traps, is there any data about those that do trapping? Because I believe I have a neighbor that does trapping, and there was a beaver den at one point, and then it was gone because the beaver was no longer there. So that, I think, would have an impact depending on how many people are still trapping.
There's not a ton of targeted river otter trapping in general around here, I wouldn't say, but is that what you're asking about? Like, what were you, was that connected to the question
Well,
about
trapping
river
in
otters?
general for small, for trapping, I would think, and in specific, the beaver.
What was the question?
So I was just joking with, it says trapping cameras, right?
Yeah.
But it was sort of the actual traps that are out there that trap mammals and beavers in specific and other wildlife that is affecting what we might see because they're taken out at certain times of year.
That's true, yeah, to align that with the trap seasons, that might be good to know how your camera trapping aligned with the hunting and bird trapping.
For sure. Yeah.
Question for the whole group, and I don't know who would like to say, or if all of you would like to say something, but, so some of you are graduating and some of you are not. Is there a level B or a, 600 level class, so you can come back and, what if you were gonna come back to this class, what question would you focus? What would be your focus question?
Ooh. Sorry for the sound effects.
I can start. I think, yeah, for me, I'm really happy with how this worked out. It was really great to connect with Bristol and connect with Alex and learn about these spaces. And if anything, it really just started my curiosity. Like, I think it would be great to go back in like a more like statistical intensive way and like really see what is there in some of these spaces. And like do it for a longer study period as well. I mean, we were definitely limited by our semester, but also was still impressed by how much we were able to see in just that amount, which definitely is a testament to the wildlife that's present here. But there's always more camera trapping that can be done.
So your specific question would be around statistical analysis of mammals in the area?
That makes it sound a lot more boring, but I think like,
Well, you gotta
but
get out
yes,
there to get the numbers
yeah,
first, so you
exactly.
might
Like, I
find
think
more.
something a bit, more, just put more cameras in smaller spaces and
There's
see.
a lot more people in the community too that you could reach out to,
For
that
sure.
would like say, oh yeah, I could blindfold you and take you, and show you my spot. Right, Alex?
I didn't anticipate how public a lot of my honey holes were gonna be.
I think you've been trying to ask a question.
I was just wondering, there was data about 20 years ago. So how did that, can you use any of that to compare to what you got? I mean, I'm sure they didn't have all the video clips. So what was it? So they didn't have so many houses, it's much more wild. What, what the change of species were, the amount of species, is there any kind of comparison that?
Yeah, we didn't really dive too much into that, but that would be also a great follow-up for another semester or something of looking into what they found there 20 years ago. And I'm sure there are some spatial analysis layers and stuff of Bristol that we could dive into to see how like the town's development and landscape has changed over that time and to see if we can find any correlation between changes in wildlife occurrence and changes in development.
And I think, yeah, what we mostly worked on was those maps that are in the town plan. And a lot of it has remained similar, like in a large zoomed out version still. Although the town has grown, like these larger forest blocks are still relatively well conserved and intact. So it's about continuing that, I think, too.
There was an introduction of the wolf in Yellowstone, which had dramatic impacts on, well, I can't really enumerate all of them. Is there a species that you think could benefit from either being introduced? And if so, what effects might you imagine could be beneficial?
I mean, yeah, wolves in Yellowstone had a massive impact. Proposing the reintroduction of carnivores into New England is contentious. I grew up in Massachusetts, and my mom is from Shelburne, so I'm familiar with some of that. But yeah, I mean, even within what's already here, we have beavers, a lot of them over at the Watershed Center that are putting in work right now. I've also been doing some work for Alexis and for more bioregion over there and looking at kind of where they're active. They have a massive impact on the Vermont forest landscape and riparian landscape, as I'm sure many, if not all of you are familiar with. But yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty to kind of dig into on what's already here, on coyote presence and things like that. And then, yeah, on beavers as well.
Yeah, I'll briefly add with regard to coyotes in particular. I mean, there are a lot of carnivore species that used to be here that aren't now. Like for example, we talked about catamounts, we talked about wolves, and a species like the coyote, which has moved north with time and didn't originally live in this part of the country necessarily, has filled the niche of some of those past carnivores. So the one thing we talk a lot about is like shifting baselines and like what actually is natural, what species should be here, what species should be prioritized, because things are always dynamic, and it's true though that, I mean, it's hard to narrow down one species that is more important than the rest when they all contribute to these ecosystems in different ways. But yeah, the predators definitely catch a lot of the limelight in the media and in discussions like these.
You mentioned that 70% of Bristol is privately owned. And does that privately owned include both individual owners and business owners? Is it private versus state or government ownership, or what does that mean?
Yeah, it's more of the second of the public land we classified was a lot of like federally owned, state owned, the like nature conservancy parcel, and then like public towns and town owned. And then, so the rest, private homes and businesses is
So A. Johnson is
side.
private.
Yes.
Yeah, and they own a lot.
Yeah.
And it should be noted in this conversation, we've referred a lot to conserved lands versus non-conserved, but we've got some private landowners in Bristol that have done tremendous jobs of keeping these corridors open and there's working timberland. So
yeah,
it's not a black and white, like this is good habitat, this is not because it's private, we've got tremendous corridors that involve private lands.
Do you have any figures of that? What percentage of land within the town of Bristol is conserved?
Yeah, this map we don't have the number, but it actually would be worth calculating and not too difficult to do. But so the green chunks some of them are privately owned as well, because it's from a state aggregation of protected land and land with easements, or that is these like public land, Green National Forest, Nature Conservancy, town parks. And yeah, so there's also with some of these state layers too, always some updating to do as well. But gives a general overview of the areas that have more long-term preservation and put in place.
I see that Kevin Hansen is online. Kevin, can you unmute? He is the head of the,
Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission. And, he's just done a whole, the commission has done a whole doing new regulations in terms of zoning.
Yeah.
And I think he took into account that he was looking at wildlife corridors in that. I just want to be sure that he did take that into account in his new zoning regulations. Kevin?
Thank you for, I think, for bringing that up. So our recent zoning regulations were pretty much restricted to what we call the village planning area, which is dominated by the traditional village. So we had a grant, I can't remember the department, but it was a state funded grant to focus on developed areas such as the village and looking to intensify development in already established areas. So that is the gist of the current changes to the zoning. We have started discussing as a planning commission what our next activity will be, and there's still interest in looking more town-wide, if you will, at housing opportunities or zoning opportunities to support housing throughout the town. And where that goes is a mystery, and it'll be the discussion of the planning commission over the next maybe couple, 3 years. So we didn't really specifically look at wildlife corridors with our discussion because it was pretty much hemmed in by the village planning area. If we go wider, it may encompass that, but there are quite a few areas, and I think if you look at the planning zones in Bristol, the conservation planning area, if you will, is quite a bit wider than the government protected area land, particularly on the mountain ridge that goes up through the north to south, more or less on the east part of the town. So it's important also to look at what the planning zones are, if you will, within the town to look at whatever risk or non-risk there may be for the topic we're discussing. Does that help?
I'm glad you're looking at it in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
And to add to that too, we also have been looking at those zoning layers. We have a couple other maps as well in our report. So this is a more simplified version as well, just to kind of present with that point.
Are there any other questions from Zoom at all?
So Sally's got one.
Sally
Sally's
Burrell, do you have a
thinking.
question?
You'll have to unmute.
Thanks. Yeah, first, I'm so sorry I got here an hour late. It's crazy. I had been looking forward to this for about 2 weeks. Anyway, I'm sorry, but
It's recorded, don't worry.
oh, good, great. One question I had just today, and a few days when I've been riding my bike on Carlstrom Road, I've just been wondering about that area that's been really sawed down and ground up and stuff like that. And how does that, what's going on? Is it housing or just, and maybe that has nothing to do with this meeting, I don't know, but it just seems like that's the kind of thing that needs to be zoned or worked into a thing.
Yeah, I'm unaware of that. As far as I know, it's private land. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the land is always changing, I think, and that's one of the things that inspire the students to do part of this work, right? And to update some of this is things change, and we know we're putting houses in and there's actively managed forests, and we want to sort of think about where is wildlife today and maybe how was that different 20 years ago.
I think Kevin's got some input there.
Oh, great.
So I'm not sure, Sally, when you said Carlson Road, are you talking about down on 116 by Johnson's Mill where the trees were cleared out?
No, I'm talking about on Karlstrom, like beyond Ken's house and further on down on the left, if you're heading south. There's,
Like Harvey Lane.
There was a big blow down there when we had that big storm.
Okay.
No, they've been cutting.
No, I know, but it's that
Okay.
area.
Got it.
Yeah,
It's-
because I guess my point is the harsh weather we had this winter and the Johnson site, which is very visible, is a good example of where, a lot of evergreen trees were damaged and the remediation was to take them out and start over.
Yeah, that could be what happened on the Karlstrom, because that's just above, sort of where Johnson's is. Sort of. Yeah, it may be just wind came blowing through there and made a mess, and now it's being just starting from scratch again or something.
Thank you.
Do you think we should put these in the town office? I mean, how should we
Right
distribute
inside the
these?
door, there's a whole
Yeah.
sort of area for brochures.
Well, this is really, really fantastic.
So it's also for the commission. What?
Got a plant
so
in
we'll
the
have
audience.
access to all of your stuff.
Yeah, much more than this.
And then I guess how are we gonna make this available to the people?
Yep. We'll
We
figure
don't
that
know
out.
yet.
We have to see what they give us, I think.
That's through our website, the Conservation
Probably
Commission
on the
website.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was thinking with these brochures is wasn't one of Porter's projects to hand out new baggies to put
That's
in
where-
That's where this came from.
That's like one thing that.
wouldn't this be perfect in there?
Exactly.
Like, hey, here's a way you can help out, because
Vermont
otherwise.
soap and.
Yeah, and like where to put your trash and what you could do to
Right.
help the wildlife in town.
Yeah, there's also all the pamphlets out front here. Maybe if the library has much space or not, we can ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think also, we'll make sure the planning commission has a copy of the PowerPoint and any maps you've generated. We can share this with the town administrator as well.
Our hope is that it gets distributed as far and wide as possible. And we hope we have developed, mostly the guys at the end of the table have developed a lot more maps than just this one. And that interactive tool as well can be really useful for adding layers and taking them away and looking at different things in particular. Yeah, the online version of the pamphlet as well is hopefully very accessible to people.
So you'll need to make sure you're not done with the project until you give Alexis and I everything, as well as an admin approval for anything we need, like the Go link, for example, for any of those tools you created, right? But to be transferred, like just how Lauren gave you so much foundational stuff. Now you need to do that. So the next group, hopefully, if that group is us or whoever it becomes, can start from that starting place, right? We want it to sort of die in a drawer somewhere. We want to keep it going.
Yeah. So Alexis is just gonna keep feeding us students. We're gonna have this back down to-
So like the college does have a lot of good resources to get us engaged with community. The Center for Careers and Internships it gives students funding to work on internships that are able to provide funding themselves, which is great because we also need to eat food and pay for housing in Middlebury too. But also, so these resources are easily available from Middlebury, but we also want to make sure that BCC has access to them in case other outside people want to use them as well, including students from other colleges or people in town that are really interested. So we want to make sure this is as available to people who might not have the same type of licenses and access to programs that we have at the college. So.
It's thought I saw a hand
Did you
up
want to
in
say
the back.
something? Yeah.
Mine isn't so much a question as it's just a comment about how great I think this is and how in a town I lived in prior to coming to Bristol, there was a very active group of townspeople that were part of the Keeping Track system.
Mhm.
And within that town, there were transects that those individuals would go to on a regular basis, and with GPS data and paperwork that they recorded in the field, that information was then used in not only creating the town plan, but in some cases, giving pushback to development that was happening in that town that was pretty directly violating a lot of their findings about particularly animal corridors. That town, like this one, had a river, and those river corridors are pretty important for animal movement. It may be something to consider for your work in conjunction with planning and perhaps zoning to, to see about getting some keeping track activity in this town.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna conclude shortly, but
Probably, yeah,
just
that'd be
a
good.
statement to add to what Bruce said. I think when you consider the development pressures that are out there, there's never really been a voice for wildlife. Well, there's been very few voices, and I think this amplifies what can be stated because there's data behind it, and there needs to be a way to sort of have some pushback against development pressures, because once it's blacktopped, once it's built, it's probably not going back to a natural state. And so we have to navigate that balance, and there needs to be advocates for other species. And there we go.
Well, I just want to say, this has been an amazing experience having you help us with all these things. We gave you some very loose ideas and you provided so much for us. This has been really fantastic. It's such a good job. I just want to say thank you for all that hard work. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having us. That made it possible. We couldn't do it without you. So.
Really,
hopefully this can get carried forward.
Yeah, it far exceeded any of our wildest expectations of what we could put together.
And we now know there are no Sasquatches.
But you have everything.
We know we didn't get a
And the printer, basically all the printers are broken on campus right now. Well, I think it's because everyone's printing, and halfway through me printing more pamphlets, the printer overheated and stopped working. But
if you want to send this to us.
No, you said
with this QR
well, also I can print for free right now on campus, so I want to get some more physical copies, and I'll see.
Seriously, I'm so bummed.
Now my cat can bring my printer.
Washington, yeah, Colorado, Singapore out west. No, it's a bummer to have to go. Well, I guess I don't have to go, but I would love to come back.
When you were graduating.
That was a long time ago.
I was just asking, I
Come back for turkey.
Yes, season's not over.
Season's not over.
But Alex will not show you any stuff.
Really generous.
I know, he always does that. They went there.
I haven't gotten this.
I want you to go get a big goblin.
You'll be the first to know.
I appreciate that.
Carolyn, do you want us to figure out as you continue your
Choice.
business?
You're welcome to see
Oh,
how
I'm sorry.
town politics don't.
If you see Parks and Rec.
It's pretty, actually. Great show.
Yeah, I know. That's good. You guys are planning.
Thank you guys for coming. Bye. You betcha. We're just gonna, do you wanna ride? Frisbee golf.
How much longer?
You know, and
How
sort of
much
like,
longer?
slow down.
What?
Half an hour.
Yeah, 20 minutes, half an hour. We're talking about frisbee golf. Yeah, we got like 20 minutes.
Yeah, okay. We can get through this in five. Alex has priorities.
No, it's right.
I hope all of this. We need it. All of it is yours.
Are you guys going to hot dogs right now?
No.
We'll wait for you. We'll wait for you. Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know what I love it.
Okay, I was like, they have both of them from your email, and then when you were texting, I was like, oh my god. They like, the boys were like crazy
What? Yeah, what's your name?
He did.
Mary.
You need to cool down. And so like, yeah.
So are you on?
Basically, I called the doctor and they're like,
No, we'll stay.
why don't you come over
I saw you here.
He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I got it down to like, I was like, I can't get it lower than that. I gave the extra dose of ibuprofen, I gave him Tylenol, I had him sitting in a tepid bed for an hour. And I was like, couldn't get it down. I was like, my kid's the wrong color. I don't know. Yeah, we went in there and they were like, they looked at the back.
Okay, so let's go on to the rest of this meeting. Oh, sorry. Letting people know.
Horrible disease.
Whoopsies.
Wow, this is a chair upgrade.
You guys shouldn't have given up the next chair.
Okay, great. So we are back. We're gonna do a quick few meeting agenda items. So we do a public comment period. Does anyone have public comments on things not on the agenda? Excellent.
That was awesome.
Okay, addition of items to the agenda. Anything you want to add? I'm hoping not, since we'd like to end in 16 minutes. Review and approve minutes from April 11th. Would anyone like to make a motion about
Motion to
that?
accept them? Or.
There's a
whatever,
motion to
like,
accept. Does anyone like to second that
Second.
motion? Second, the motion, second, anyone in favor? All those in favor? All right, the motion carries, the minutes are accepted. In terms of correspondence, I did receive 2 pieces of mail that I don't quite understand, that I think Kristen Underwood would understand better. They're from the Vermont River Conservancy, they're official, stamped, received, and they have monitoring site visit reports from the Fuller Corridor easement and the Bristol River Flats Corridor public access. I'm not exactly sure what these are. Would you like me to put these back in the mailbox and you can pick them up, maybe? You're
Yeah, I
listed
have,
as the property contact, Kristen.
I have digital copies of those, and that's basically, they have to do an annual inspection of the property Saunders and Fuller. And so that's what they're reporting on.
Okay, and you have digital copies, so that's fine.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure we understood what that was in terms of correspondence. We've completed the wildlife presentation and we'll move on to old business. Conservation Commission membership, we still have vacancy for 2 members in the BCC. Did anyone? Okay, no one that came signed. That's sad. Oh well. Well, we'll still continue looking for 2 new members. No Mo May updates. So also though, if you do know someone or spreading the word, please, maybe I'll send some kind of an email soon, maybe I do the green update numbers and I'll say, we're looking for people again. All right, no Mo May updates.
To jump in that quickly, we send out a newsletter every week. Would you like me to add that into our newsletter?
That would be wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Zach.
Yeah, if you send me a little paragraph, I'll put it in there for tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, for tomorrow.
Oh, it can be any week, I guess.
Oh, good. I feel like we got like finals and stuff right now. I don't know if that's, but yeah, maybe
Whenever you
next
get
week.
around
Okay.
to it.
I'll send you something. Thank you so much. That's a great idea.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, and then The next item agenda thing here is gonna be no mow May. And no mow updates?
The signs are up.
At Sycamore Park.
Yes. That was,
Was it-
one was returned. It was the one I'd already put up.
Was it obvious where the NOMO part of Sycamore Park is? I inquired and didn't receive any feedback about what they were not going to mow for
I don't
May.
know.
So where are the signs?
At the kiosk.
Okay.
We
And
did,
I
That's
got out of
good.
my car, I put it in and then got back in my car.
that was mentioned the last
kept
meeting,
tracking.
the plan for the mowing. Was that your
Right.
question?
Zach,
I
we're
don't
leaving
know.
that spot in front by the kiosk, no mowed, or not mowed, gosh, that was grammatically awkward, not mowed. So that it can be the no mow.
Yeah.
But is it really just 2
Like
feet on either
advertisement.
side of the kiosk?
I don't
Is it
know.
100?
Zach, have you been out there?
We'll know a little bit more when Meredith has a chance to see the first mowing, and it's probably gonna be.
Have they mowed yet?
That's why I'm trying to get Zach, but he can't talk right, yeah.
I think we're gonna stop by tomorrow, so I can give you more answer tomorrow, but, yeah, I know you guys talked about, Meredith relayed that around the sign is kind of the, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but we also noticed that they haven't mowed around the cannon and town green. So I don't know if that would be also a good, like, centerpiece point to not mow. Just something to think about. They haven't mowed it yet, so, and it's getting kind of long already, so something to think about.
Huh.
We could opportunistically just stab a sign in.
There's already a sign right next to it
already the
anyway,
sign
so,
of-
Oh, that's right, we
For
already put
Green
the
Day.
sign in, that's right.
yeah.
Okay, well, Zach, if you see that, yeah, if you could just give us like maybe an email update if we need to do anything about that at Eagle then, not Eagle, sorry, Sycamore.
While we're talking about it, as far as the signs that are out there, I got the impression from Meredith that, and the one that was found in maybe just off to the side in the woods, do we have a pickup that's happening for some of those signs that might be out there? So they're put out and then somebody's gonna, just like the
Yeah,
political
well, I
signs
went
that
to find
happen.
it and it wasn't there, so that's probably why.
Okay, last
Yeah.
year, all right, well,
They hold up really great.
yeah.
What happened was the no-no
We saw
sign.
ours.
We found the big ones. Someone found like in the John, and there's like covered in like decomposing leaves and
Yeah.
but they washed off and they worked pretty well this year,
Yeah.
even though they didn't like that for a while.
Yeah.
We'll put ours, I just realized that ours is behind the barn, so we'll put ours front and center on Pleasant Street. Don't worry, guys, we're not mowing.
Till September. Again.
But in terms of Sycamore Park, I would assume that the end of May, early June, pick
Grab-
them up.
grab
Yeah,
those
then it
signs.
goes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful, thank you, Nancy, for,
I believe they're still there.
and Carolyn for the No Mow May presence on Town Green.
I was there for Green Up Day, you know, so.
I was there to keep you company.
Yeah. So who was there for no mow? All right, okay, so I think that's going along well then?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, Green Up Day, in terms of the debrief for that, we distributed a total of 401 bags this year. There was a sort of a strange manufacturing issue where the innermost bag on most rolls was sort of melted in a strange way, such that garbage would fall at the bottom. So I'm not exactly sure how many people took extra bags or how many we ended up leaving. We have overcounted bags that really weren't used this year. We gave Jono a bunch of the broken ones. He said he could find usage for them around his property. So yes, that was a little bit of a shame. I'll tell the Montpelier people about that in terms of bag manufacturing for next year. The volunteers, we had 260 students from Bristol Elementary. We had 206 other registered volunteers for a total of 466 volunteers this year. We will also be getting the weights in from the Addison County Solid Waste District, but we have not gotten those weights yet. They'll be sending those out in the next week or two. So I'll have to report back to those at the next meeting, or I might just send an email on Front Porch Forum, and that's how you'll hear about it. So that's the plan there. That's it. But yeah, it was good. It was nice weather, a lot of turnout. It was a nice day. All right.
I do have a comment about Green Up.
Oh, great. What's your
So
comment?
we started seeing bags along the side of the road a week ahead of time, which is great. Do it when you can. But animals are getting into those bags. bags.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 of my bags picking up other people's bags.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's balance there.
I know. The balance is I put them out on the Monday before Green Up Day. I've been doing that for, well, I guess as a town, we've been doing that forever, as far as I know. They used to be handed out inside the town, now we do it on the steps
Yeah.
with Zach and Meredith's help. And so I don't know. Yeah, I don't
think
I think if
there's
it's
a
like a
solution.
sunny day, it's nice to just go out and do it. I'm happy if people do it, but I agree, sometimes they get ripped into. Some people request from me bags well in advance, because they don't want the grass to grow up, or maybe their neighbors to sort of manure over a patch, but I don't want to go into it later. So I have gotten several people from the community have called me and asked for bags much earlier. And some years I've been able to help them and give them bags earlier. This year with the eclipse and visitors, I wasn't able to help people with that. But again, like you said, I don't want them out too early either. So
I
it's
noticed,
tricky.
I noticed that Leicester has a drop-off point. It's got like, big trailer that people drop off bags there. It's possible that we could have a extra early drop-off point, like if you're going to do it way in
Yeah.
advance, here's an option, you don't have
Yeah.
to, but here's an
Yeah.
option, a big trailer, but then we'd have to get someone who had a trailer to stick it somewhere.
Right. If it was up to Green Up Day, I would be doing so much messaging on so many things. They wanted us to join the Guinness Book of World Records this year. They wanted me to do an app. They wanted me to be on Instagram, and I don't even know what else. And I was like, no, I'm just putting bags out. We're gonna do the normal thing. Like, I don't want to. It works fine, right? I don't want to like obscure the message with like some new system every year.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that then you change the system and now people are, what's the old system? Where's that? And I just want to keep it as streamlined as possible so people know what to expect. So it's like a tradition as opposed to like, oh, what's this new thing? I got to sign up now, and it confuses people and they don't want to do it. So I'm trying, that was the advice I had received from some of the people that passed the torch to me. And that's what I'm really trying to honor, is just to make it as easy as possible
Good.
on the volunteers.
Good.
Like, she was like, join the Guinness Book. I was like, no, not gonna happen. Like, we're not confusing the volunteers with this situation.
Yeah.
We had 24 hours to run around and get signatures. We had to fax it somewhere. I'm like, no. Let's just get the trash. So, all right, other things then. So Green Up Day feels good. Okay, moving on, then let's do a parks update. And we have Zach here with us to discuss Frisbee golf from the Bristol Rec Department.
Yeah, I have a little PowerPoint. I just don't know how to share my screen. I don't do Zoom very often, so.
If you hit share screen, there's a green with an up arrow in the very
yeah.
middle bottom.
The only
Click
other
on
color I
that,
see.
And then you click on the PowerPoint that's open on your screen.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So you have to have your PowerPoint open, click share screen, and then it'll give you the option inside a window of the things you can share, and you can select your open presentation or whatever presentation you're using. Cool.
Got to
Can I
change
just-
some permissions too. Sorry about that.
While he's loading that up, tell you that at Sycamore Park, 2 of Porter's interns helped install the pollinator garden
yes.
sign. And we weeded the garden and straightened all the posts.
That's
So it
fantastic.
should look more tidy.
Nice.
That's all. But having their help install the post was great.
Are you going to be doing more seatings with the Be the Change?
I have
Be
not
the-
communicated
okay.
with anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that note, all of the apple trees are now pruned, and I did take a look at the sliding plexi on the kiosk. And I remember there was some question, I got them to work.
Oh,
Yes, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Nice job.
We still need to update the material that's on the kiosk. They're faded, ripped pieces of paper.
I think Zach has said that if we gave him things, he would do it, right, Zach?
Great.
Yeah, I was on the phone with
Anytime.
Meredith today. She wants to add a few things into that kiosk as well.
Perfect. Great. That sounds great.
Do you
Okay,
guys,
Zach.
does anyone there have a key for it? I know we have one down in the clerk's office, but I don't know if anyone else has a key.
No key needed that I saw.
Oh, okay. I know there is a key for something at Sycamore Park. I don't know
The
if
gate.
it actually belongs to anything.
It could be the gate to
The
let.
gate is a
vehicles in.
combination lock, I think.
I think the key was originally for a lock that connected to those sliding glass. But if the lock is gone, then it's not necessary anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Okay, Zach, you requested
Um,
5 minutes, but I know we've gone way over, so you can do slightly longer, but.
I'll go quick. It's not very long.
It's just really hot in here.
Yeah, no. Imagine up in Holly Hall, it gets like, I think last year it reached like 97 in there one day. Okay, so basically we had an idea maybe 6, 7 months ago of putting a little disc golf course at Sycamore Park. We haven't really done too much research into it. I've just done very basic reaching out to people who have made disc golf courses other places in Burlington and Williston and stuff, but that's pretty much it. So I thought I'd just introduce what disc golf is and yeah, a little bit about it. So it's also, you probably have heard the term frisbee golf before. It's probably what's more commonly known as. It's basically golf, but you use a frisbee, a golf club, and a golf ball. And instead of a hole, you use this device you see here. It's like a chain cage thing. Yeah. So next, I'm going to talk about a few options of installing the thing. You can do a in-ground option, which is obviously going to be the most permanent. If you use a concrete, going to be very permanent. You can do it with a ground sleeve, which I'll show you in the next slide. Or you can do, if any of you guys have been over to the hub, they have a movable portable one outside the hub, which is just like, looks like this. So that's the portable option. And then if we go the in-ground route, this is a little diagram of what it would ideally look like. So on the left here is a little anchor tube that stays in the ground all the time. And then in the summer season, the spring, summer, fall season, you kind of insert the actual cage into the pipe. And then when you're not using it the rest of the winter time, you just take it out and you can cover it up with more dirt, or you can just leave it how it is, whatever you think.
Zach, it says it's got a lock on that. You know any more about that?
Yeah, so there's like a little, kind of like our lacrosse goals, they have a pin that holds it in. But yeah, we would ideally lock them up so people can't steal them, because I'm sure anything that's not locked up gets taken pretty quick. And then another aspect that is not necessary, but people who play frisbee golf like to see, is a platform to throw from. So this would obviously probably more than the cage. This would be more of a impact on the environment of Sycamore Park. It could be as simple as a little square of 2x4s with dirt and grass inside, or they have them with a pavement and concrete. Lots of different ways to do it. This isn't necessary, but it's like a nice thing to have for people who play frisbee golf. I personally have only played once, so I'm not an expert at all. It's fun. It's a nice way to get outside and walk around. These are some other things to consider, like John talked about. We'd want to lock them up because they would get taken or moved around. Sycamore Park is about 8.5 acres as far as I could find online. You guys would probably know more than I would. But typically, frisbee golf course takes about 1 acre per hole. So we would be looking at 8 or 9 holes to have at Sycamore Park. One thing to offset the cost of creating the course would be sponsors for the holes. This is obviously 5 years away from happening, but installing and purchasing equipment and all that would be cool to have. And on the little signage for each hole, you'd want to have the par as well, kind of like a real golf course. I don't know if any of you guys were on the meeting earlier today. I wasn't on it, but Meredith was, so I heard the whole thing. I think, Jono, you were with the Accessible Parks meeting.
That's right.
This kind of goes along with that. I don't know if we would loop it in with the accessible parks, whatever we're gonna do to Sycamore Park, but it might be a time to tackle two problems, not two problems, but having opportunity to tackle two things at once instead of, yeah. And as you can see on this map on the right here, there isn't really any places to play Frisbee golf around Bristol. It's kind of a empty hole. The farther north you go, there's a lot, obviously in Chittenden County. But here on my next slide, I have all the close ones. Regents has a few. If you've been to the high school sports fields, they have one around the outside. It's not like a real one. It's kind of a rinky-dink one. CVU also has the same type of thing. Rutland has one. St. George has one, apparently. I thought St. George was just a gas station, but I guess they have a Frisbee golf course too. Williston, we have one here at the elementary middle school, and then Sugarbush has one. And that's my whole little presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah.
So we talked to Meredith about this and Alex about, Alex about this as well. And I know there were some maps that were drawn up to put 9 holes in at Sycamore Park. And the last time we saw that, we had serious concerns about holes that were proposed along the rocky bank that would be that wouldn't be there for long because of the river. So I was wondering if you had any new plans about how you would stick in 9 holes in the space offered by Sycamore Park.
I think we would probably hire a company to kind of plan it out. Like I said, I've been not emailing much, but I've exchanged a couple of emails with a guy. I think his company's called Disc Golf Vermont, something like that. He's designed a few in Burlington and I think the one here in Williston. So he would probably do a whole planning, a little study for us to look at. Yeah. I haven't looked at the one that Meredith has from the past.
Other questions?
An observation, I think if it could be phased in based on actual usage, I would pass on putting the tees in. I just think that's overkill. I might liken it to public state courses versus private clubs. It's a lesser sort of facilitated, with all the particulars. So.
Well, especially with that being a pretty active floodplain.
Yeah.
Those wouldn't look very nice for very long.
Yeah, I think things to consider, is the very active, flashy part of the river. It's, we're not allowed, according to the FEMA way the land is gifted, we can't have permanent structures on that property. So we have to be mindful of that. As well as maintenance, right? Right now, we have a hard time if a branch falls off a tree, depending on the mowing company each year, sometimes they just go around that branch instead of moving the branch, right? So I have a lot of concerns about long-term maintenance of a project like that. But I think, Jim, did you have a question from the?
Reiterate what I've said in the past, the town doesn't allow permanent structures, and putting concrete in the ground is a permanent structure on any of our parks. And the whole idea of the Conservation Commission formed, as Kristen will tell you way back, is to try to keep it primitive, keep it natural. To me, that is not wanted at all. Something to think about.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily advocating for a certain option. I just wanted to provide you guys the information. One idea I had was maybe for a couple of years, if we were to try it out, just get a few of the ones they have at the hub, just like the $200 portable options, and chain link them to a fence, bike lock them to or not a fence, a tree, and then if people use it, maybe in 5 years we plan something else. If no one uses it, then we scrap it. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, so that might be a better way to start. I agree. Yeah.
You mentioned there's one at the high school. Is there an option to make that one better? You said it was rink-a-dink. Could we
Mhm.
beef it up and use that existing and make it better?
Uh,
I haven't
Or
seen that.
maybe move those cages like to the Bristol Channel Network loop, like through the business park around there or something. Would that be an
yeah, that's a
option?
good idea. I think we'd have to talk to the school administration about that, but yeah. Talking to the kids at the hub, sounds like none of them even use it, so I don't know why they
Yeah.
really have it.
Is that on school property though, or would that be the Bristol Rec Club property?
It's on school property.
It is, okay.
Yep.
I can never remember which is where the cutoff is.
Yeah,
I
kind
remember
of that's curious line.
we've been speaking about this for at least a year, and I don't remember how the idea originated. Any backstory on
I
that?
think
I think
Meredith,
there's a guy
there's-
came.
yeah, there's Meredith had a friend,
Who were
yeah.
pushing for it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Citizens.
Yeah, it seems like it's, it just seems like, yeah, the park is just a little too small and there's this permanent structure.
I like the Bristol Trail Network idea. Is
Right?
interesting. You go
Yeah, that's a
for a
great idea.
walk, you do a little.
You're right,
Yeah,
but
that's
that
by the
case-
business park
It's
loop.
small.
I
It's
don't
not
know.
very many acres.
If you looped around though, and then by the dump trail somehow and back around the high school, I don't know.
I'm not
It's
opposed to
worth
what,
talking to Porter about.
to what Jim is advocating, in that these are natural areas and maybe they
Yeah.
remain more park and
Mhm.
or different, there's recreation, there's the high school fields, which there's already one that exists. There's, maybe something that could happen around the perimeter. But I would say, you sort of table, discussion a little further to
Yeah.
see, more on the ground interest versus an outside person, or I don't know, maybe there was a town resident that really was promoting it back at that point, because
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's a groundswell.
Eli, do you want to ask one?
No, I was gonna say, this is super fun and like I had a great time doing it, and in my hometown there is disc golf infrastructure along certain trail networks, and people hate it because it means there are projectiles flying through the woods along the trail. And, like, so like it works really well in places where it's more set aside, and
Mm-hmm.
when it's on a trail that's frequently used,
That's a good point.
it is
Yeah.
really challenging. 'Cause-
That's a good point. Good
Yeah,
point.
that being said, like I've had a great time playing.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
But
Well, that's
you
the
just have to be
trouble.
intentional about it.
No,
That's
that's
the trouble with
what
Sycamore too.
That's true with Sycamore, I know.
There's
And then
people
so much of
walking,
the
are you gonna
floodplains.
get
Yeah. Jim.
Contact the rec club, something on a rec field, that'd probably be a good idea over there.
Mhm.
That's where most people would do their recreation.
Yeah.
There is also one getting put in Middlebury right now.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Where-
wonderful.
I think it's on the edges of the golf course, but there's some students who I know who have been working on it over the fall.
So on
Oh,
campus.
cool.
Yeah, but I
Like just
think
off the tan
it's
there.
supposed to be public access tentative.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be cool. Maybe we could find out more about that and put you in touch with them as well, Zach.
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, and are keeping this sort of like in our consciousness. I know it's something you've been thinking about and Mary's been thinking about for some time. And so, yeah, just there's a few things to get through to see if it's gonna work or not. But I like the idea of, starting temporary or maybe contacting the group in Bristol, in Middlebury and seeing what they're up to as well.
A quick summary comment is, think about that location, maybe more appropriate for the rec park as was pointed out. And then second, going with the less permanent, more of the, I guess that third option of the portable, because you can always upgrade, you can always sell that to another interested party and then get something that's more permanent, and see down the road whether there's enough interest and funding and everything else that would be necessary to make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll keep thinking about these things and let us know if you're gonna make any new steps. That'd be great to keep in contact about this, I think.
Sounds good.
Cool, thank you.
Any more parks information?
That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah, other parks?
I can insert, when you think it's appropriate, the meeting that Kristen and I.
I guess
were
that
on,
would be
so-
now, right?
With accessibility?
Yeah, Kristen, you've been quiet this meeting. Do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, Jono and I attended the monthly meeting of the accessibility project, and we helped them to finalize a plan for advertising the project. and pretty soon that'll be distributed on Front Porch Forum, along with a survey of citizens asking for more information about how they might like to use those parks or make them more accessible. They asked if we could host them at a June or July Bristol Conservation Commission meeting, just to update us and talk through some of the conceptual plans that they're developing. And another opportunity is they're going to come do a tour of all three parks, Memorial, Eagle, and Sycamore, on June 4th, which is a Tuesday, from 1 to 4 p.m. And anyone would be welcome to join at any one of the parks or all three of the parks.
So the
Did I miss
plan
anything,
there,
Bruno? Yeah.
no, well, so I don't know what the capacity is of the van that Bristol, the rec park would have. And so I think it's a great opportunity to, I mean, a number of us have already been at the parks for work days and so on. But just to have the perspective of accessibility and maybe other things that come up, but that's the main focus. And Porter, if you recall, leading the charge to get this grant and having a chance to sort of delve into it. It's hard to say when the final product will be. It's a lot of steps in between here and there, but similar to the survey that was put out in Front Porch Forum, we would be doing something similar, and then having a good sense of, where that leads us.
Zach said there's 14 seats in the van.
Oh,
People
That's
can
right.
probably drive themselves too.
Yeah.
They can as well.
Right, like I'm planning on trying to attend and I'll
I know,
obviously
but there's
drive
like-
myself,
there's
so
like a
I don't have to
nap time
install the
right
car
then.
seat into the
Yeah,
van.
exactly. That's where I'm at too.
That's-
Well, that sounds great. And I saw that email as well. I know. I hope people can attend that. That'd be really great to get a bunch of voices out there. Anything else about parks?
No, so that just maybe dovetails into our next meeting agenda item about summer meetings. So I
Yeah.
told them that we normally take August off, but June or July could be possibilities. Do you think that's true? Going to be the case?
I'll be out of town in July, but I will be here in August.
Yeah.
But I can do Zoom, as long as we do outside for those meetings, but
Yeah, we're out of town for August, but we're here in July.
okay. We could just do Zoom only for summer, and then if you're out of town, you could still try to jump on. If that's, I know it's not as much fun. We like to go outside.
Yeah, we don't have any internet at the lake where we stay.
Oh, sure. What do you want to do? Anyone who wants to cancel August? We usually cancel August. Do you want to cancel August?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wait, when were you gone?
August, with no internet.
And you're July.
Yeah, I can't do July. But I could do,
Even
I could
Zoom.
do Zoom on for July though, but we
Let's
usually like to do
cancel
outside.
August.
We'll
Let's
cancel
cancel
August,
August,
but we'll have, can we
July.
Zoom July then?
Yeah.
Or, cause I'd like to be outside in July, but maybe we won't do outside July this year. We'll just do Zoom
Yeah.
July.
Pavilion?
Do you want to do the meeting?
Well, then
Do you
I
want to
will,
come to the meeting?
Well, if we can see it,
You're on
if
vacation.
this, if they want to come to the July meeting, and if they do, then we'll do it. via
yeah, well,
Zoom,
could we
and
do
then-
the June meeting with the accessibility people?
Yeah, they can do either. I think they were asking us to tell them what would be the best. June or
June
July.
will be
Yeah, let's
right
do
after
June.
the park visit, so that would be good,
Mhm.
like a week after.
We could do that. Okay, I'll put that, let me make a note before I forget. So we'll have them visit for the June meeting. That's next meeting. Yikes. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Since we are loosely still on parks, in a conversation with Meredith, she said that it happens, I don't know, maybe every few years, there's gonna be a load of gravel that will be deposited in the parking lot of Sycamore.
Yeah.
So that'll manage a good amount of the potholes and so on, but because of the flooding, that's, and just other issues, it's hopefully gonna hold up for a certain while. And then again, related to the wheelchair accessibility, there's a series of those boulders that are spaced incrementally. And while they have an excavator down there or so on, they're gonna maybe try and widen one of the gaps so a wheelchair can get through, maybe a foot wider, but obviously narrow enough so ATVs do not get
Yeah,
through
it's
there.
tricky, yeah.
Yeah.
So gravel will be delivered. Will they also fill the holes? Or are they just gonna make a pile of?
Well, the
Yes, they do like
ideal,
a pour, I think, and then they sort of.
yeah,
Okay.
the ideal way to do it would be to sort of grade out what's there, because then you've sort of taken the aggregate and you've mixed it.
That's
Whereas
my
the
question.
potholes,
Who is doing that? Are
well,
we doing that?
no, we're
Okay.
not doing it.
Okay.
It's the rec
No,
department.
no,
I don't know the details. I was just trying to say that there is a plan and I
It's
don't
like a
know
road
the,
crew thing.
Got it.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. So, I have then for our next meeting, we'll do, the accessibility group will come. I guess we'll do that inside, so we can make sure that's recorded. That seems like an important one. Then we'll do July. I will be able to hold a public version. Will someone be able to come and do a public? What is this called? Like a
Zoom?
physical meeting space? Can someone
I mean,
offer that? Or do we
We
have to
can
do it on
do
Zoom?
it from our house, right? That's
No,
what
we have to
coming,
have
or
a-
do we have to
do a
come
physical
here?
meeting space.
Oh,
right?
because we can't
Yeah,
just do Zoom only.
yeah, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, so someone can do a physical meeting space. We're not supposed to hold only Zoom. And then in August, we'll go on hiatus for August, and then we'll come back in September. And we'll see about that. We can plan that in July.
Great.
That sound good? Okay, great. Then that's everything I have planned for tonight with our longest meeting of all time by a bit here.
Next meeting is June 11th.
Our next meeting is June 11th, and we'll have
6 to
the,
7:30.
we'll do the same hybrid with that one
Okay.
as well.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I
Is anyone second that
second.
motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 7:47.
Wow.
All right,
I
thank
hope
you for
your,
coming, Zach.
Your babies are feeling better.
We hope so too.
That's so